Welcome to EoZTV. I'm Elder.
I'm Mrs. Elder.
Special guest, Mrs. Elder today. Um, today's an unusual show. This is not our normal fare, but it sort of relates to what I do very often. Normally I talk about bias, media bias. I talk about it's usually in reference to Israel, but also but lazy reporters are not something that is only with Israel. And bias is not something that only happens with Israel. It's something that you see a lot all over the place. So, at any rate, I wanted to talk about this study that was in the newspapers a couple of days ago that said when people are using hydroxychloroquine, that they're actually more likely to die than if they weren't. And this is, of course, the drug that President Trump has mentioned a number of times as saying it had potential because there was a French study that came out. But then there was a big headline saying, hey, the drug that Trump was pushing, I should have brought up a headline, I apologize, but the drug that Trump was pushing is actually no good. It actually kills people. That's the way it was represented. I didn't think about much of it. I figured, the reporter's saying it's true. It was some sort of a study. I didn't really look into details. And then I saw an email from some congressional candidate who said, a Republican presidential candidate, a senatorial candidate, who said that, the study was garbage and this is just all a scam. So I figured I'll look at it myself. I don't take anybody's word for anything, whether it's the president's or whether it's the president's critics. I don't take anybody's word for it. So I decided to look at the study. Here's the study. Outcomes of hydroxychloroquine usage in the United States, veterans hospitalized with COVID-19. Again, and I want to say just as a disclaimer, I am not a doctor. I am not a statistician. I may have no credentials whatsoever, as far as you know. But I do believe in facts. If you agree with what I'm saying, great. If you disagree, feel free to argue, and you can do it on the on the chat that's over here.
I'll argue.
Oh, you can argue too. And my wife, Mrs. Elder, very possibly is an expert in everything. At least I believe she is.
Oh, that's so sweet
okay.
of you.
So
in this, I got to tell you, I have something to say.
We'll have a chance. If I let you. Anyway, so
that's so nice of you.
The people that are behind the study, and again, this doesn't mean anything either because, as I said, I have no credentials. But the complaint that I read about it said, this guy that was behind it was a statistician, and a couple of them are really optometrists or ophthalmologists, and they're really nuts. I don't like doing that because science is science, facts are facts, and whatever if the things add up, they add up. So here's the study, and here's their results. 368 patients were evaluated. HC means they took hydrochloroquine. HC plus AZ means they took the hydrochloroquine plus the azithromycin, or no HC. And they said the rates of death, if they took only the hydrochloroquine, was 27.8%. If they took the hydrochloroquine plus the azithromycin, was this 22.1%. And if they took nothing, it was 11.4%. So they said, based on that, it sounds like more people were dying because of that. So let me look at the study. Let's see what it says. So later on in the study, they go through details. There's a table 2, that gives details as far as where these numbers from, and how the raw data, which is, or not quite the raw data, but close to the raw data, which is what you need in order to be able to reproduce things. So here was the table, the baseline demographics. It says how it shows the baseline age that people were on, and their race, body mass index, things like that. Fine. So I made a little spreadsheet showing the important stuff that was over here. Let's go to it. Here's the rates again. The rates of death that we mentioned. With the HC is 27.8 plus AZ is 22.1, nothing 11.4. Let's look at the median BMI, which is, again, the people's body mass index. The people that died the most happened to have the highest body mass index. Not by a huge percentage, but there was over here a very big correlation between death rates and body mass index. The people that didn't die generally were not as, they were thinner. Smoking. The 18.6% of the people that were given the hydrochloroquine are smokers, much higher percentage than the two other groups. And again, when you do a study, again, this is a retrospective study. So you know what that means, Mrs. Elder?
No, humor me.
Okay. A retrospective study meaning they didn't do this ahead of time. Normally, when you do a scientific study, you do it ahead of time and you say, we can control all of the variables. We want to make sure the same types of patients get the same different types of treatments, and everything else about the patients are the same.
Cool.
So therefore, we know that it's the treatment is the only variable. So if they get better, it's almost certainly because of the treatment.
Okay.
And there's statistics behind this and everything like that. In a retrospective study, you can't do that because it's already after the fact. It's after people already left the hospital or dead or alive or whatever it was or cured. So if you're going to do something that's a retrospective study, and by the way, this study was not peer reviewed, it was not published yet, nothing like that. But if you're going to do a retrospective study, you have to try to make sure that the set of people that you're looking at are roughly the same health.
Fair
okay,
enough.
That would be a fairly, again, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a statistician, but you think that's a fairly obvious thing. But here the case is not. Smokers, the pulse oximetry. I've got interested in this from a New York Times article, and Mrs. Elder and I just received our pulse oximeter so we can test ourselves, because there's indications that people that have COVID-19 generally have, well, we all know that they end up with a lower amount of oxygen in their blood. One of the problems is that they don't notice it, because usually when people have like a below 90 pulse oximetry, they can't breathe. I mean, it's very hard for them. But there's something different that under COVID-19, that you have something called silent hypoxia, which means that you don't even realize it, that you're losing oxygen.
So the hypoxia gets you.
Yes, it will. So you figure the people that have the lowest numbers are the ones that are going to be in worse shape, right? So over here with the pulse oximetry, the number of people that had a lower than 95% oxygen the percentage was 37.1% for the people that took the hydrochloroquine, 42.5% for the people that took the hydrochloroquine plus the AZ, and only 26% for the people that took nothing. So the people that ended up more healthy were the people who were healthier to begin with because they had a higher pulse ox rate. Not only that, let's look at fever. That's a fairly obvious thing, is fever. And a fairly obvious thing that you could try to make sure that people, when you're doing a study, you make sure people have the same temperature. People that had a mild, any sort of a fever, from mild to extreme, 43% on HC, 46.9% on HT plus AZ, but only 38.6% that for the ones that were taking nothing. Again, this is a significant difference in these things. Let's look at very high fever, over 100, 100.4. Again, 11.3% of the HC people had that, 11.5% of the HC plus AZ, but much less, only 7.6% of those that had nothing. Do you see a pattern over here?
Yeah, it's a scan.
Let's look at blood pressure. Higher than 120 as the systolic blood pressure. 74%, 64% for the people that were not. So they treated the people that were the sicker ones with the drugs, and the people that weren't as sick were not treated with the drugs. Guess what? The people that were sicker died. It has nothing to do. There's no control over here. There's not even an attempt to go through. They had like 350 people. That would be. I mean, even a smaller number would be statistically significant. They could have tried to make sure that the patients were roughly of the same health level, and they didn't. Then we're just looking at the much higher blood pressure. People that had more than 159, 160 or above, okay? Mm-hmm. Extremely high blood pressure. 20% of the people on hydrochloroquine, 10% of the ones that took both, and 10% of the ones that did nothing. So yeah, look at that. The people that only took the hydrochloroquine had a higher death rate. On this right, I have this correlation. And again, I'm not a statistician, but a correlation is pretty much a number that tells you which, how well things correlate with, two sets of numbers correlate with each other. So the correlation between the death rate and these statistics that I came up with are sometimes very high. Like for the blood pressure over 139, the correlation is like 92, 0.92. It's 0.93 for the higher blood pressure. It's 0.92 when it's a higher temperature, and it's 0.93 for the BMI. Again, I may be, as I said, and I'll emphasize again, I'm not a statistician, but if you were going to say why these patients died, the last reason you would give is because of the drugs they were taking. This is not this is not science. This is garbage. Now, it's unconscionable to create a study like this. Okay, with knowing this and seeing these sort of numbers, and I didn't go through all of it because they're looking at people. Okay, did they have liver disease? That's and do they have these various blood platelets and stuff like that? They're doing a lot of unconscionable
things anyway.
They are, but I'm just saying that to do this sort of study and release it, it's political, and you don't politicize science. You don't politicize people's health. This is crazy. Okay, you can argue that Trump is doing the same thing. Fine, I'll accept that. I'm not saying that hydrochloroquine is the answer. I have no clue if it's the answer. I have no dog in this race as far as what I just want to find. I want the scientists to find something as fast as possible so we can all come back to our normal lives. I don't care one way or the other what the solution is. I don't care whether it's this or whether it's what Trump talked about today, which is the
ultraviolet light blood irradiation.
Ultraviolet light blood irradiation, which is something that Mrs. Elder is a big fan of, and it's just maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. It's like. But let's find out.
But it showed promises.
It shows promise, right? If something shows promise, you check it out. If it's not going to be now, of course, okay, any drug has a danger, but you leave it up to the doctors to decide whether the chances of the side effects are going to be worse or better. Over here, the doctors made it. I'm not saying the doctors did anything wrong. They're doing the best they can to keep the patients alive. So they want to try the hydrochloroquine. They want to try to do the HC plus AZ. More power to them. However, in the study, it just happens to be that they were doing it as Hail Marys on on the people that were the sickest. You don't generalize based on that. This is not, as I said, this isn't science. It is, this is crazy. So
now that you've brought up the statistics.
Yes.
Okay, I think we got the point.
I hope so. That sort of thing drives me crazy, seeing that people are, that this sort of thing. So okay, so the study is unconscionable enough, but the reporters, they're the equivalent for illiteracy for numbers is innumeracy. They are innumerate. They don't know the first thing about numbers. And again, I'm not saying I'm a big mathematician or anything like that. I'm not. But you have to have some sort of a facility of understanding how basic statistics work and basic science. And reporters were reporting, and this is the New York Times, this is everybody reported on this study without even reading it. They all trust, it has big words in it, and therefore it must be true. And I'm sorry, it's not. Be critical when you're thinking over here. As I said, maybe hydrochloroquine works, maybe it doesn't. We'll see what happens. I've seen both sides of the story. There is a, somebody just pointed out to me this article that was in Nature magazine saying, okay, for mild cases, it does seem to have some limited effects. And this is also, and again, this is just get published in whatever magazine, nature.com is publishing this. Nature Reviews on Immunology. This is, it showed that there's, okay, a little bit. Let's hope it's true. If it's, it's up to your doctor. These are already FDA-approved drugs, and this is not the only one. There's other ones, and there's an Israeli drug that was just mentioned today that shows promise. It shows promise in animals. We don't know yet whether it's going to work in people. Let's hope so. But it's also a drug that is approved in the U.S. FDA for other reasons. Doctors often will use drugs for purposes that are not the, that the drugs are effectively made for, and if you can, and if the blood and if the side effect profile is reasonable, that's not going to make things worse. It's you take a chance on it. What drives me nuts is that people are now, disparaging potential solutions, which hydrochloroquine is. It's still a potential solution. They're disparaging it because it was mentioned by Donald Trump. And that's ridiculous. That's just not the way to do things. That's just playing politics. Like, oh, I hate Trump, therefore anything he says must be idiotic. And he'll say some idiotic stuff. He might say some good stuff. I don't care. He brings it up. Let's look at the facts. Let's ignore the fact whether he's the one that said it, or whether it was the president of Harvard that said it, or whether it was the publisher of the New York Times that said it. Look at the facts. And if people are consistently, okay, fine. If the facts come out, great. But this is completely driving me nuts. So it's only peripherally related to Israel coverage. I'm sorry for those. But for changing the topic over here, but it's the same sort of thing.
Well,
yeah,
they're going in and they're attacking him, whether they're right or not.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's Trump. If his words don't make sense, fine, go after his words, go after what he says, and disprove him. But don't just automatically assume everything he says is wrong.
The people that are attacking them make me wonder in general that they have any logic or any basis for what they're saying in general. And it's just gotten so prevalent that they're wrong all the time. It's just really repulsive.
It happens a lot. It happens with other presidents. It happens both sides of the story. There are people that that don't think on both sides. At the moment, Trump derangement syndrome is a real thing, and there are people that
they should be looking for a drug for that. Oh my God, I'm sick of listening to that. Yeah, oh my God.
I don't know if hydrochloroquine would work with that.
I think we should give it to them and see what happens.
But at any rate, that's all I really have to say. Just wanted to get it out there because this is people's lives we're playing with over here, and you don't just put together some garbage numbers in a garbage study and say that, oh, here's a correlation over here between taking the drug and dying, when there are far higher correlations. There's other problems with the study too, but people were mentioning to me on Twitter. I didn't quite understand them, so that's why I don't want to get into it. So I'm sure there's other things you can find out about it, but I think what I've showed over here is fairly convincing that that the people, the data sets, were not remotely equivalent.
Don't go to a doctor that hates Trump.
I don't know about that. I'm not going to say.
No, but I'm just saying to you, so then you'll get skewed.
No. That's not true. Doctor, you go to the best doctor you can find. It's not, hopefully politics don't enter into his or her equation over there. But
they do.
No, that's not. With a decent doctor, it's not. They're good doctors. They're bad doctors. Any decent doctor is not going to let their politics get into that.
Okay.
Anyway, that's all I really have to say.
And don't forget to donate to Elder.
That's right. Mrs. Elder always has to throw that in.
Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Got to make this go and get out there.
I'm trying to do what I can during this crisis to add more, more materials, more multimedia, more videos for everybody. So hopefully
you're exposing fake news. That's awesome.
That's what I do.
I know.
Yeah. Okay. In the meanwhile, I'm Elder.
And I'm Mrs. Elder.
Thanks a lot for joining.